Hey guys, it's Will. It's Hong Kong Cinema Appreciation Society. Welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, welcome to the channel. Thank you for finding me. I'm glad that you're here. If you could give us a sub and a thumbs up and a comment and all that fun stuff, please do. Let me know what you think about the movie. I'm going to be talking about other films you've seen me talking about, what kind of movies you collect on Blu-rays, what kind of stuff you want me to review, and all that fun stuff. I am here today with a movie review. I do not have a physical copy of this film. I watched it last night on Netflix. The movie is called Hand-Rolled Cigarette. It was released in film festivals in 2020, and then it came out theatrically in Hong Kong in 2021. It is the debut film of its director, whose name I wrote down here because I did not want to forget it, and his name is Chan King Long, and he's an actor. He's been in like maybe 5 or 6 films like recently in Hong Kong. He's pretty young. I think he's like 32 or so he's about 30 when the film came out. And Gordon Lam is in this film. You'll recognize him from Election, from Paradox, which is the 3rd film in the SPL series. He's in Drug War, he's in Cold War. And then Bipin Karma, who is a South Asian actor. So he's, I don't know if he's Indian or Bangladeshi or Pakistani. I couldn't find a ton of information about him online. I think this is his first movie, or his first like high-profile movie. But his performance and Gordon Lam's performances are really fantastic. But across the board, the acting in this film is really genuinely standout. And so I'm going to talk about the film. I'm going to give you my impression of it. I don't want to do too long of a video, but if you're just here for a quick hit, if you've heard the name of this film before, if you've seen it on Netflix, if you're curious about checking it out, here's my 2-word review. It's fucking fantastic. This is a fantastic movie. This is the best new Hong Kong film I've seen in years, honestly. Probably, like, if you're talking about films not directed by Johnny To, who is like the great standout for me of like the 2010 era, the 2000s, 2010s, this is like the best Hong Kong thriller I've seen since like the golden era. This is a fantastic movie, and I highly urge you to check it out. It is a thriller, it is a dark thriller, it is a violent movie. It has some very brutal scenes, so just be aware of that, but highly recommended for me. So what is this movie about? It starts in 1996, right before the handover. You have this group of soldiers who serve the British colonial government of Hong Kong, but are all Hong Kongers, right? And Gordon Lam is in that group of soldiers, and then there's other guys too. And we find out that what happened when Hong Kong was handed over to China was that the British dissolved basically these military units, so they had to go and find other jobs or like do other stuff, right? And they didn't give them citizenship. So they were like stuck in Hong Kong, but they're, these are guys like in their 30s or whatever, 20s or 30s, who have no real other career prospects, and they don't have a lot of skills and stuff. And like, what are they going to do other than their military skills, right? Which, as we so often know from these films, who knows if this is actually true, but in the world of cinema, having military skills and no real job prospects often leads to a life of crime. So we skip ahead 20 years, and this guy's life honestly just kind of sucks. He's in huge amounts of debt, and he's like introduces like criminals to other criminals. He knows like triad bosses. He does kind of like sketchy stuff, black market selling of goods and stuff like that. And the other guys from his military unit, they don't really talk to him anymore, and his relationship with them is really soured. And as the film goes along, you find out why. So that's one section of the movie. Then you have this character who, well, there's a group of really 3 characters, but one of them is like the main character in that group, who are, you have the main guy, his cousin, and then his younger brother, and they are of South Asian descent. And the film, a lot of it takes place around the Chungking Mansions, which is, if you've seen Chungking Express, the Wong Kar-wai film, the first section of that film deals a lot with immigrants in Hong Kong, or those descended from immigrants from South Asia who ended up in Hong Kong. And so some sections of this film will really remind you of Chungking Express. So these South Asian guys, they're drug dealers, and they run afoul of a triad boss, and the Gordon Lam character happens to know that triad boss, and through various circumstances he ends up helping this young South Asian guy hide from the triad boss. And so it's about his relationship with that guy. It's about that guy's life in Hong Kong, his relationship with his younger brother, who's much younger than him, like in grade school. And then it's about the triads trying to find these guys who have run afoul of them. So this movie really kind of reminded me of Johnny To, and it really kind of reminded me of Ringo Lam. It has that very bleak, kind of slow burn, violent brutality to it. It takes place in a very dark world with very broken characters, but I also saw a lot of influence from South Korean cinema. So that's what makes this film different to me. It's not just like a rehash or a nostalgia piece for the golden days of Hong Kong cinema, because it brings in what I saw as a very pronounced influence from South Korean cinema, especially like Park Chan-wook. There's a fight scene at the end of this movie that really reminded me of Old Boy. You know, that single take tracking shot down the hallway with the hammers and the beating people and stuff like that? There's a scene at the end of this film that really reminds me of that is just batshit insane. Like someone catches on fire, they're like beating each other with like pieces of wood and with bricks, and like it's really brutal. This is the film that gets very dark in places, and the bad guys are very, very bad, and they do very horrible shit. But the good guys find very tender relationships with one another too. The story also has a few kind of really unexpected twists. I apologize, the dogs are going fucking batshit insane right now. I don't know what they're barking at, but I'm sorry for that if it's getting in the way of you being able to hear me talking, but I want to keep going on my train of thought so I don't forget what I'm talking about. So like I said, there's that Korean influence, and there's this kind of slow burn thing here, but then you have a definite Japanese influence too. I see influence from Takeshi Kitano and other kind of Yakuza films like that, particularly in the Triad guys, like in the way that the villains are portrayed. The lead villain is this very eccentric character who's got like bleach blonde hair and gold teeth and gold rings, and he wears like white suits, and he really reminds me of like a character from like a Takeshi Kitano film. But like I said, the story does some unexpected things. It is kind of a straight-ahead thriller in a lot of ways, but there are a few parts of it where you get these twists that I really didn't expect, but that are totally organic. Like there's a character who shows up at the end of this film who you've never met before, who no one has ever mentioned before, who totally kind of twists the trajectory of the film in a really interesting way, but his integration is totally organic. It makes total sense that he shows up. You're like, oh, okay, yeah, that makes sense, even though you've never heard of him before. So it's really smart screenwriting in a way that you're bringing in this new character at the end, but it's not like a wait, what just happened kind of thing. You're like, yeah, okay, sure. So like I said, Old Boy, I'm just looking at my notes here. It looks at racism actually in a way that's really interesting too, because a lot of the characters are very racist towards the South Asian characters, and it looks at their community and how tightly knit they are, but how they have trouble integrating with Hong Kong society, even though like they're growing up there, they speak Cantonese. Like people are surprised they speak Cantonese, but like, well, I've lived here my whole life, like why wouldn't I? Like it's a really interesting look at that in a way that I don't know if I've ever seen in a Hong Kong thriller before, and so I really appreciated that. I thought that was very interesting. So I mean, that's a pretty good overview of this film. I don't want to tell you too much about it. I don't want to rabbit on for too long. Just if you love Hong Kong thrillers, if you really like Johnny To, Ringo Lam, and if you like South Korean films, Japanese films, I think you'll really dig this movie. I would highly recommend that you go check it out. It's on Netflix in the US. I believe it's also on Netflix in the UK. I don't know if Netflix has like global distribution of it or not. There's a Hong Kong Blu-ray release of it that I've thought pretty seriously about picking up. It's a little bit expensive with shipping to the US and stuff, but I might pick that up and kind of show that off at some point in a future video. But the film is Hand-Rolled Cigarette. And I should also mention that I do think there is cultural and historical context that I missed here, just not being from Hong Kong and not, having been there and not having lived there. There's a lot of imagery of cigarettes burning and incense burning. And I know that the incense burning in Hong Kong is a very important thing, with a cultural thing, with like funerals and going to people's graves and Buddhist ceremonies and stuff like that. And I don't know if I totally picked up the full cultural context of that, but that is in there and something to pay attention to. So the film is Hand-Rolled Cigarette. My name is Will, Hong Kong Cinema Appreciation Society. I apologize for the dogs going fucking bananas right now. I thank you so much for watching, and we will see you next time.